Brown versus Board of Education by Isabella Fonseca
and Molly McAndrew.
Brown versus Board of Education was the name given to 5 separate cases heard before the Supreme Court, but all of the cases were concerning the issue of segregation in public schools. Plaintiffs of these cases argued that the Equal Protection Clause was being violated as the segregation of black and white schools led to an inequality of the standard education. It led to blacks receiving an inferior education to white children and an overall racially biased system. Linda Brown was one individual who personally felt at a disadvantage to her white peers and believed that she deserved to receive the same level of education. In this case, Linda Brown was the plaintiff. She argued that the schools for black children were not equal to the white schools in Topeka, Kansas. She believed that segregation violated the so-called Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, which holds that no state can deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Brown argued that the black children were not receiving the same quality of education as the whites. In this case, the Topeka Board of Education was the defendant. They argued that the segregated schools were of the same quality, but simply separate for black and white children. The attorneys for Topeka stood firm that the separate schools for non-whites were equal in every way and were in complete conformity with the Plessy Standard.
Segregation of blacks and whites in the school system resulted in different experiences for the students, in which blacks were made to feel inferior to whites and were provided with a lower standard of education. It questioned the whole idea of equality between races, as it seemed that equality always favored whites. Brown v. Board of Education challenged the separate but equal clause and proved that this standard was, indeed, not being maintained. It overturned this decision, leading to a brighter future for African Americans and promoted the value of education for all.
Initially divided under Chief Justice Vinson, the Supreme Court justices did not come to a decision by the end of the court's 1952 to 1953 term. The case was to be reheard in December of 1953, but in the months between, Chief Justice Vinson died and was replaced by Chief Justice Warren. Upon rehearing the case, Chief Justice Warren was able to convince all of the justices to come to the unanimous decision of ruling in the plaintiff's favor. It determined the segregation of the school system was, in fact, unconstitutional. Brown v. Board of Education overturned the decision of the Supreme Court in Plessy v. Ferguson. It declared segregation of schools to be unconstitutional and brought the United States one step closer to total equality between whites and blacks. It promoted the value of education for the African American race and led to an improved education system that was not solely based upon the color of a child's skin.